Scientology could be called, well, you could call it a religion of religions.
Today's guest interview is with independent Scientologist Michael Salihovich, who's in Serbia. He's been around Scientology for a long time. He was in Scientology when the communists were in Yugoslavia. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. That was actually a socialist country at the time called Socialist Federative Republic of Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
It was never like a hardcore socialist or communist country like those that were part of the Eastern Bloc. You know, we were pretty much some kind of a bridge between East and the West. But formally, it was a socialist country. Yes. And actually, the part of that, the reason why that war in Yugoslavia happened is because there were those forces in Yugoslavia that wanted to line up with Russia. And there was actually an attempt after the breakdown of the Berlin Wall. There was an attempt in Russia by certain generals who actually wanted to, revert Russia back to communism. Really, they wanted to go against the reforms that started happening in Russia. And some generals in Yugoslavia were actually plotting with the generals in Russia at that time. If they make a coup in Moscow, that then they send their soldiers to Yugoslavia and prevent the republics that were making Yugoslavia at the time to separate, to move on, because people started voting for non-communist countries. I apologize if it sounds a bit confusing. But anyway, it was pretty much where the country will go toward the West and toward the NATO, or it will go, toward Moscow and Russia. And that was also part of the conflict, which brought about, disappearance of Yugoslavia. So originally I was born in Bosnia, now I'm living in Serbia.
Okay.
It was one of republics that was making Yugoslavia.
Yeah. And you have a new training academy, and so I wanted to hear about it. But we can talk about Yugoslavia later, because I'm interested in hearing what it's like to have lived in a communist country, because I'm in a communist country at the moment as well. It's just that it's not like the old school communism.
Yeah, that was very interesting, how not only Scientology, but many other sort of, let's say, spiritual teachings were coming into that country, which, as a socialist country, religious expressions were mostly discouraged, so to say, So actually, in the early 1980s, we had like a beginning practicing Scientology group, which I tend to think could be among the first independent groups in the world, if not the first. Because when Captain Bill Robertson led the Church of Scientology and started the Free Zone in Germany, I think it happened in 1983 or after that. And at that time, we already had a group, independent group in Yugoslavia.
So you weren't a part of the church?
No, never.
Oh, I thought you must have been a part of the church and then left.
No. Actually, the Church of Scientology never got hold in Yugoslavia, And I personally was never a member of that church. Yeah. Even nowadays, I heard that they were sending some volunteer ministers, as they call them, to do some courses and stuff. But they never succeeded in anything. But it's very interesting. We had like a very strong independent scene, and people coming from abroad, to deliver courses and auditing, especially from the Saint Hill from UK, people who left the church, like Eric Ballard or Alan Ambrose. I mentioned two of them as the most important for me personally, because I did my first Scientology courses under Eric Ballard here in Yugoslavia, and also some beginning auditing sessions with him. But later on, Alan Ambrose, who was the course supervisor and Dianetics auditor, he continued coming to Yugoslavia, and he delivered like a full Dianetics training to us and did many courses and continued coming. We became friends. So it was very, very, very interesting era, very interesting time from 1983 up to 1991 when the war started. And then in 1993, my friend, who was actually trained in the same hill as class 5 auditor, at that time he started academy level training with a group of us. He later changed his mode of working. But anyway, to conclude, that was the past, very rich past, and then really nothing happened. Nowadays we got nothing in any of the countries which were, like former Yugoslavia. So this project, which I started, actually was inspired by internet, really. In the past, let's say, decade, many
You're talking about your new training academy, right?
Yeah.
Just to clear things up in case people didn't know.
Yeah, that's right. As I said, like in the past 10 years, many Scientologists turned to internet, as means to communicate, to socialize, to reconnect, and even to try delivering training, and some of them even auditing, right? And I decided to look in that direction too. And pretty spontaneously, a group of about a dozen of us from United States, from Europe, grouped together actually to make this project, which is actually a very simple project. It's not like it's not attempt to claim anything big, really. It's really an attempt to make it available for people who A, don't want to meddle with the Church of Scientology, and B, who would like to learn Scientology but independently, from their home, without subscribing to any cult or group or anything like that, to have that opportunity. That's all. And also, we do not focus, at least for now, at those so-called upper levels. We can talk about it, the controversial OT levels. But at the moment, we focus on auditing of the grades, for those who know what it is. And our aim is to clarify and make it available for people to experience that state of clear, as they call it in Scientology. And we can talk about that too, if you want.
So you started an academy that delivers courses, is that right?
That's right. The idea is primarily that centered around academy level courses, from academy level 0 up, but also all those courses which are, let's say, basic courses which people can do to learn basic stuff about Scientology, like basic Dianetics course, or like Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course, communication course, PTSSP course, and stuff like that, and to learn that online.
What about, do you offer like the data evaluators course?
Oh, we will, definitely. It's the plan. I made like a list of courses which I divided into 4 tiers. Like basic courses tier, then advanced, then intermediate one, and then advanced tier course, and a 4th one which is dedicated to non-LRH courses. That is, to courses which are either inspired by his technology or either come from other sources. It's called like personal growth tier. So obviously we do not consider ourselves as dogmatists. We acknowledge the genius of L. Ron Hubbard, and we acknowledge the valuability of the Scientology technology, of Scientology auditing. And there is one very interesting paper that I would like actually to show you and to tell you about. It's the first scientific paper published in one American scientific magazine which analyzes auditing in a positive way, written by former US Navy psychologist who is also a trained Scientologist and who is an independent guy.
Really? What's his name?
Very interesting paper. It's a paper by John Wolfe.
Okay.
And
he's a Navy psychologist.
Yes, he was. I have it somewhere here.
I really reckon Hubbard was a naval intelligence officer.
Well, I don't know about those things, to be honest. It's very, very interesting area. But
well, I noticed it with with this book, Mission Earth, like it's interesting comparing Mission Earth to Battlefield Earth because Battlefield Earth has information in it about Earth in Battlefield Earth, but it's not like Hubbard's telling you this is the truth. It's kind of like you can tell that Hubbard was inspired by certain events on Earth and then put some things into his storyline. But you don't read it, you don't go, "Well, this is the truth." But from with Mission Earth, like all the way through it, it's like this is like Hubbard saying, "Here's the freaking truth," but in a fiction story, and it's like, "Here's the truth." And in that story, the main character is like an Air Force officer or something that then does a mission for the CIA. He's like Jeddah O'Hella or whatever. It really reminds me of like Naval Officer Hubbard doing a mission in the CIA. Like it just seems real. I don't know. It makes sense. Anyway, go on.
Well, I know some people, writers, who are also into some forms of, let's say, spiritual study or esoteric study, and they often use that medium of their writing to present some of their ideas from that other life they live. So,
well, yeah. If he did do missions for the CIA or something, he's not allowed to talk about it. So how can he get the truth out there? He writes this fiction book, and in it there's a group called the Coordinated Information Apparatus, CIA. It makes sense.
Maybe.
And there's so many things in there that are like Hubbard direct. I can't. Have you read Mission Earth?
No.
I recommend it more than.
I never read any Hubbard fiction to be.
Oh man, I'm telling you, Mission Earth. If you're gonna read anything, you've got to read Mission Earth because it's the last thing he did, and it's like he sat down and said, "I'm just going to put everything I know about Earth into a fiction story. Here you go, boom!" And it's like, whoa! And it's like he's trying to get the truth out there, and it's all inside information about how the world works. Like it talks about like Rockefeller getting a corporation into debt so then he can control them via debt, and then it talks about court cases being corrupted by like backroom deals with judges, and it's so much inside baseball about how the world really works. It's just really funny.
You mentioned that data evaluators course.
Yeah.
And Ron Hubbard, as a very productive man, writer, he gave and produced so lot of data, put it out there in the world, from fiction to non-fiction and various things. And I think that I would say the knowledge given in data evaluators course should be first applied to that body of data, that we really differentiate what is more important, what is less important in that overall body of Ron Hubbard's work.
Well, it's so important because we start off with study tech and word clearing, and that's essential because we can't communicate without it. I can't stress how beneficial that is. I mean, you could argue that people don't even get wins from anything besides the word clearing. Someone could argue that. It's just like the word clearing is like, whoa. I mean, it's just we walk around in life not even knowing that we can't even understand things, and then we just get confused by things, and then we give up on studying things, and it keeps us as like dumb street sweepers, if you know what I mean. But then when you teach someone how to clear words, then they can actually start understanding things. But then here comes a data evaluators course, which is a whole new level, which is like, now that you can actually read, right? Now let's teach you to try and work out if what you're reading is true or not. Because like, what if you're just reading perfectly all this crap? You're not going to get anywhere. So then what's scary about it is that it wakes you up to the truth about Earth. And I don't even know if I should recommend people to do it, because you just like see the world and you're like, the world is so fucked up and full of so much bullshit data. It's just like, oh my God. And the data evaluators course gets you to see that.
Yeah. Well, you see, the way I see it, we have two big holes in the fabric of the modern society. One is nobody is really teaching us how to learn, how to study. We don't have that knowledge. In a school, we are made just to replicate the information. You know, we are not really empowered to use our critical thinking to learn things for ourselves and find truth for ourselves. We are not learned.
It's more just memorization. It's
and
memorization.
Sorry, what?
It's memorization basically. Because I got a friend who's a maths tutor, and he's actually into maths, like the philosophy of it. He gets it, and he tutored his sister once, and when his sister was getting straight A's like he was, but then he was like, hold on a second, whoa, my sister's approach to maths is completely different to my approach. My sister just memorizes it all. And he's like, whoa, this is fucked up. She doesn't understand anything. She's just memorizing that you do this with this figure and that figure, and she has no understanding of maths. So there's two completely ways and he says that some teachers you come across in high school would teach it in that memorizing way, and then some, if they were good at it, actually taught it in the philosophical, like ancient Greek way, and that's the cool way. And so that's why a lot of us think that maths is shit, because we were probably taught just the memorization way. But it's like, no, maths can actually be really cool. And it seems like everything at school is just the memorization path, because it's just maybe easier.
Well, the way I see it, and the school system I've been through was based on memorization. You know, like just duplicate, memorize the data, and then replicate it. You know, so there is that gap of nobody teaching you, you know, how really to learn, how really to understand. So if all of this Scientology would disappear, or let's say of Ron Hubbard's work, and this segment of study tech, which I'll also tell you something interesting about it, if that remains, I think it would still be valuable for humanity. But there is also another gap. Nobody is teaching us how to live, you know, and there feels like to be some kind of a general consensus that by the very fact that we are born and alive, that's it, you know. But in fact, if you look at it, there are so many things to try to learn and understand: how to live, how to study, how to do our work, how to go with our relationship with others, how to marry, how to raise children, you know, how to do this, how to do that, eventually how to die, you know, how to approach the end of our earthly existence. Now, let's say the common world religions that we have, they mostly try to fill in that gap, you know, but we live in the times when there is a lot of, let's say, distrust to organized religion, and there is really no teaching about that aspect of how to live, either in our schooling system or out in our society. And I think that one of the reasons why people get interested in Scientology is because it somehow fills both of those gaps. On one hand, it teaches you how to learn. You know, one of the definitions of Scientology is learning to know how to know.
Exactly.
And second gap is it gives certain, you know, practical tips on how to live, and gives you tools to test that. You know, whether, okay, does this work or it just doesn't work. But there are so many things to talk about. Let me just say this for now, that when it comes to this Clearing Academy online project we started, it is really hard to say at this moment what is our position on that. But I would say that we do not consider Scientology really that much as a religion, you know, or as a cult, as an applied spiritual philosophy. And also we acknowledge that the fact that there is a long history of spiritual research on this planet. Scientology came to give some answers which others were not able to give before. And I would like to talk about it a little bit. It's related to communication cycle, and to auditing cycle. But we do acknowledge that there is a long history of spiritual research here, and that I personally do not look at Scientology as something that gives all the answers on everything all the time. I don't approach Ron Hubbard's writings as a scripture. But at the same time, we do acknowledge his genius and the workability of the auditing process. And the auditing process is just part of Scientology, you know. I don't think it is necessary for one to take on everything that Hubbard did and all that, let's say, religious or philosophical structure that he made. If one decides to take only the practical part of auditing as a tool that can help you to come to your own realizations of truth, I think that's perfectly fine. If that makes sense, what I just said, I don't know.
No, I think that's what it does. I think it helps bring about your own determinism and ability to think for yourself, and stop being like just a piece being pushed around by governments or people and stuff. You sort of start thinking for yourself, and you evaluate information yourself and work out what's true for you. And sometimes it might lead to someone who's unusual, who believes in flat Earth or something. But that's actually a step up from somebody who believes the Earth is round, but hasn't even inspected whether or not that's true. They're just a brainwashed robot. But somebody who actually, so that's why it's funny, because so it's like starting to think for themselves might mean that they might start believing the Earth is flat when it isn't, right? But it's actually a step up from somebody who just doesn't even think for themselves and stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. But it creates like some funky thinkers and stuff, and people who think differently, because they become who they are. Whereas before, I guess they were just being some stereotype.
It's a good point that you just mentioned. I think that the first step, and maybe the primary goal of so-called lower grades auditing, as I see it now, so everything I speak, I talk from my own perspective. Okay, I'm not claiming that this is Scientology how it was intended by Ron Hubbard. I'm presenting my own understanding. The first step and the first thing is really, yes, that we come back to ourselves, to who we really are, to our genuine individuality. We usually live lives identified with some roles, or identified with anything that we adopted through our growing up. Come to be identified probably primarily with our own bodies, but then also later on with different roles that society makes for us, then with different personality traits that we developed or we been talked into that it is our personality traits, and so on. But behind all of that, there is always who we really are. There is always us, the true individual. That is what is called in Scientology Thetan. Actually, Hubbard decided to use the Greek word or letter theta to describe life energy, let's say. Let's use that term for now in general. So Thetan would be a unit of that. And essentially, Thetan would be, in its nature, in what Thetan is, should be the same as theta. Thetan equals theta, it's just an individual, non-physical individual, which means does not consist of matter or energy, is not located in space or in time, but precedes to that. And that genuine, original individuality, who we are, we're not conscious of that as long as we are identified with anything else which is not that. Identified with our role in society, or identified with matter, or identified with position in space, or whatever else. To actually start a real growth process in a spiritual sense, one should come to realization of one's own true nature. And that was something that humans on this planet were involved into for thousands of years. Especially in yoga and in Zen, we have a lot of examples of that attempt to come to terms with our own true nature. What makes Scientology very distinctive, from those old approaches, in my opinion, is the discovery of the communication cycle. and how communication can be used to bring about increased awareness. In individual solo meditation, I may contemplate who I am, but different things that sprang up from my body or my mind or my feelings, as a consequence of my contemplation, stay with me. However, if I have an auditor across with whom I can share those things, as soon as I communicate those feelings or thoughts or reactions that came up as a result of my self-research, it's not just part of my mind anymore. It's not just part of my, as they would say in Scientology, first dynamic. Now it becomes part of our relationship to the degree that you understood and received what I communicated to you. In other words, if you ask me a question like, I don't know, tell me who you are, and I try to directly experience who I am and suddenly get some sort of a feeling of fear, and I communicate that to you and present it to you, and you understand it and duplicate it as best as you can, that in a certain way leaves the sphere of purely my individual mind. Somehow it transfers into the realm of a broader relationship. And to that degree, I actually clear my mind up of those different things. So through auditing, through communication, through presenting to another things about ourselves, to the degree that the auditor, understands it and duplicates it, the one clears one's mind. Eventually, one may come to the point to come to realization of one's own true nature. And that is what we speak about when we talk about the state of clear, And there is a lot of emphasis, it seems to me, among the Scientologists on that which is called clear cognition, which is sort of realization which indicates that one achieved that state. But that they somehow tend to forget that the end phenomenon of a process is not only a cognition. For those who know auditing, they would know that there are four elements that make up an end phenomenon for a process. One is a floating needle on the knee meter, which indicates that there is some charge gone. That there is no sort of suppression, present there. That there is a free flow of that tiny electric current. Second thing is cognition, coming to some realization. It is usually accompanied by the third element, which is improvement in one's state of being. One becomes more cheerful, because one goes, now I understand it. Now I realize it. But there is also a fourth element. And in auditing for the state of clear, it's a very important element. It's erasure. It means that a certain mental mass which was there is not there anymore, that it's erased, that it is gone. And if one came only to cognition, but not to erasure, that's not the full end phenomenon. So in order for somebody to come to a realization of one's true self, of one's own true nature as a Thetan, there must be all four elements of EP must be present, including erasure of mental mass or whatever the person was identified with. And what hooked me up on this technology or on the work of Ron Hubbard was that through practicing that method at one point of my life very intensely, really. Sometimes we would have intensives which took like from 3 sometimes to 14 days with many hours of auditing per day. The fact that this process would really lead one into a sort of a growth crisis, which, when resolved, would actually lead people to come to experience their true nature directly. Directly means without a via, it's not like you observing something and realizing something. It's more like you being that. In this particular case, you being yourself, but your true self, not the persona, not the role. And that sort of experience we discovered is pretty much the same or very similar to what Eastern practices tried to achieve, especially in Zen Buddhism, but also in yoga to a degree. And I would say that there is probably some similarity between the state of clear, as it is understood in Scientology when experienced properly, and a state of Kansha experienced in Zen Buddhism. But it's not, I will not go and say that there is really like, totally sign of being equal between
You say
those.
Tantra. What word did you say? Tantra.
I didn't mention Tantra. What about it?
No, what word did you say that you compared it with?
With Zen Buddhism.
But you used some word that sounded like Tantra or Xantra or something.
Maybe that's my pronunciation. Sorry.
So what did you mean to say?
I
Tantra.
didn't compare with Tantra. It's totally different sort of a thing. But I was talking mainly about this aspect of, like if somebody asks me, okay, why should I do auditing? What would be the purpose of it? Why to do it? I would answer because it can help you to come to your true self. It can help you to come to realize your true self, which is beyond or behind or above, or however you want to say that, anything that you thought of you are. We have those little, let's say, mechanisms in our mind which are on automatic, which present us into certain roles in life and society. If you imagine a possibility to go beyond those for a moment and come to experience yourself directly as you are, that would be the goal of it. And there is a sort of a cosmic joke in that, because many people got hooked up on Dianetics and Scientology with an idea to attain the state of clear. And they usually envision that as something which is, to be attained, But in truth, our true self, our true nature is clear already. We have just come to realize that. And the way to realize that is through auditing, through de-identification from those things that we believe we are. And the process how to do that is through this auditing communication cycle. If that is applied in auditing, if the auditor is somebody who's trained and who really tries to understand and duplicates the best what you are presenting to him or her in the course of auditing, to that degree your mind gets clearer. And that's what we talk in Scientology about stages of release.
Are you do you audit people?
Oh yeah, I do.
Up to clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like all the grades up to neurodynamics.
What was clear like for you?
Pretty much as I described it to you, as a sort of a cosmic joke.
A cosmic joke.
Yeah. You try to achieve something thinking that it is somewhere there, but then you realize that you've been that all the time. Coming to your true self cannot be anything different than who you are already. It is just our, let's say, our way of perception. We see things in a wrong way. And there is also that aspect which is very important of mental mass. We have this physical matter and energy and space and time, it's all fine. But if we look closer into the nature of our, let's say, internal universe, we can find that there is also certain mass and energy and space and time which make up that internal universe, that moment. So we call that mental mass, so to speak. Well, but that mental mass got erased. One can have a direct experience on one's true self. And I know that it can sound very mystical, and that people can have all sorts of weird ideas about it. But it is a very natural experience. By the very nature that we are, that we are here, that we are alive, that we are individuals who have this consciousness right now, it means that we are able to have that experience. It is our natural heritage. It is not it's not something that comes from outside to us. It's something which is inherent in us and with us. And but what happens when one comes to know and understand one's true nature? One should learn how to live from that state. Now one should start to learn how to live as non-physical individual or as Thetan. And that is actually what operating Thetan levels are to teach us. OT is operating Thetan. It means not operating as a body, not operating as personality, not operating as an ego, but as true self. And the more one can act in life, as true self, to that degree, one is more operating Thetan. So what I want to say is that I think that probably a lot what was spoken by Ron Hubbard and by the Church of Scientology in the beginning, both about the state of clear and about the OT, was probably for marketing purposes. And people also developed a lot of very strange ideas about it. So when I hear of people imagining that OT levels are there to help them develop paranormal powers and walk through walls and I don't know what, I usually have a grin, because the true spiritual purpose of that is to teach you to live your life from your true self. To do that, you have to discover your true self first, and that's the auditing to clear.
That's what I noticed. I think my experience with Scientology has made me more into myself, and sort of made me think for myself, and stripped away, I guess, problems or whatever that were getting in the way. And so I imagine maybe if I did the OT levels, I might become more myself. So yeah,
these grades that were made for Scientology, I think they're really sort of natural steps that one goes through, before one can start that clearing project. Obviously, the first prerequisite is that one's communication should be freed up. If one is withholding and is not able to open up to an auditor and communicate freely, and if one's communication with others is generally, like withdrawn, and if one does not have communication under his own determinism, so to say, one cannot really progress. So the first thing which is being done is to free up somebody's ability to communicate freely and to communicate on basis of one's own determinism, one's own choice. It means not outflowing compulsively or being withdrawn compulsively, but being free to communicate on one's own will when one wants that. But once that area of communication is cleared up, the next thing to work on is problems, to rise one's ability to cope with problems, to realize what problems are, how to solve problems, to realize how we create our problems the most of the time, and what we can do about it. And once attention is off that area to a certain degree, one can jump onto one's, let's say, guilt issues, things that we did that we think we shouldn't have done, or things we missed to do that we think we should have done, So one actually works in that area of overts and withholds, to liberate oneself from that feeling of being a victim or being trapped in life and so on. And after that, one goes on to clearing, we say the past ARC breaks, or, past upsets, that one has in life. And finally, we tackle fixed attitudes, because it is fixed attitudes which generally make the construction of our life. Imagine, I don't know, a woman who thinks all men are pigs, and try to live her life, from that attitude. She doesn't recognize that as an attitude. For her, it's truth. It's just the truth about life, that all men are pigs. That's how things are. So it's very difficult for us all alone to immediately recognize what are our fixed attitudes. We need some of these work beforehand, which I mentioned, clearing communication and problems and guilt and past upsets and so on, to bring somebody to a level of ability that one can actually start to recognize what fixed conditions we sustain, in an attempt to survive better, to prove ourselves right, we think we need those fixed attitudes, because if we did not have them, we would be lost. And for us, it seems to be the truth about life, for ourselves, for others, like so many of us are stuck in attitudes of sexes, like believing, oh, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I'm a body. Eventually, your true self, or Tatum, is not either male or female, is not located in space, is not even located in time. There is, the mystical writings, especially from the East, when they address that level of consciousness, they usually, speak in such terms as neither big, neither small, neither here nor there, and stuff like that. A type of language which is very difficult to understand. But the only reason for that is because it transcends our mind. It's not mental experience. This is actually one of the biggest revelations of Scientology, which Hubbard gave, let's say, to modern civilization. And that is the fact, to modern civilization, I must emphasize, the fact that we are not our mind. Many religions teach, about human soul and so on. But the fact that, we are not our mind, we are not our body. So knowing ourselves is not mental experience, because we are not our mind. We are beyond that. And people who come to experience their true selves, or people who come to experience their natural primordial state, who may come to realize they are clear, actually stepped out of the realm of the mind. They're not identified with their mind anymore. Mind is there, but I'm not the effect of it. And that's one of the reasons why one of the early, or maybe not so early, I don't know, but one of the definitions of clear was clear on the first dynamic, or let me just open here. David Mayer writes about it in one of the articles. Somebody who can affect or is not effect of mental mass, or something like that. But it basically means that one stepped out of the realm of one's mind. One realizes that one is not one's mind, that one is bigger of one's mind, that one is a cause of one's mind. And the fact that such an experience is sometimes difficult to express in words exactly. We have that bulletin on the state of clear, which states clear cognition in certain words, and say variation of this or any variation of this is applicable. Because it is important to see in a clearing process that one not only came to realize that one is not one's own mind, it's also important to be certain that through the process, certain mental mass was actually erased too, like that last element of the EP for the process. Maybe I'm talking too much. I don't know. I don't know if you're on the line of the subject.
Yeah, I'm following along, but yeah, I'm a bit tired because it's late where I am. Yeah, I did a job and recently in a house, and I think that had a maybe a suicide or a death recently, and the lady in the house, um, I could sort of perceive that she had I guess bad energy around her, like I could just sort of tell, she wasn't that upbeat or whatever, but she was just cooking stuff or doing whatever. But I could sort of tell that there was some sort of energy there. And I imagine that if she was to go clear, it would get rid of that bad energy that she had. And she would be like, cool and upbeat and positive and stuff, even though the person who died still died.
Maybe it's possible. I would say that, I will mention again that article by David Mayer on a state of clear. He gives that an interesting idea of the harmonics of clear, and I somehow clicked on that. I would agree. I think I would say there are different depths to the state of clear. Sometimes it can be shallower, sometimes it can be deeper, but it's still qualitatively the same experience. It's still qualitatively the same state, but it can explain, let's say, like why some people who attested to the state of clear are somehow different than others. There are individual differences there. So yeah, I hope somebody would react and what would be the precise effects of that and so on. I really could not say, but I can for certainly say that one's attitude toward life would definitely change, that one's awareness would change, that one's behavior would change a lot. I would say that one would become more understandable, more understanding, could understand others better, probably more loving kind.
But I mean, whatever you're doing, it must be working, because trying to set up this interview, we had some communication interference, which tends to happen on this podcast. In some situations, it doesn't happen though, which I think is strange. Because last person I interviewed was John Attack, and there was no communication interference. But with you, I get this communication interference. Now, we were trying to send messages over Facebook Messenger, and I sent messages to you, and it shows that I sent them to you, but you didn't receive them.
No.
I mean, you're not lying. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't lie. Why would you lie? But I seriously, it's very strange. And if we check the messages now, you asked me some question right at the start. You asked me some question, what time, and then
nothing arrived yet.
The first thing strange that happened was that you asked me what time. I said 9 p.m. my time suits me well, and then you said and then you said to me, what time? And I was like, oh, sorry, I thought I already wrote back. Let's do it at 9, which I did. And on my thing, it shows that I did say 9.
I thought I'd be probably late a little bit.
And then you said, can you make it 9:30? And then anyway, this is just weird.
Yeah, weird things happen.
And then you said, can we do audio only or something like that? But I just thought, I just thought this is just so typical. This happens with this podcast and stuff. It's like, I mean, who do you think that is? Do you think that's the Office of Special Affairs under orders of like Miscavige trying to stop people from doing Scientology independently? I mean, it has to be that, right?
Well, you know what? I don't know. Really, I don't. And to be honest with you, I usually tend to stay away from conspiracy theories. But also, I must admit that I don't think that any government in the world would really like to have people educated in those two areas that we mentioned at the very beginning of this meeting. And that's those two which I mentioned, a big hole on how to learn, how to really learn, and the second, how to live. I think that probably there is no government in the world that would like its citizens to be really, fully self-determined and
yeah. Well,
people in those areas.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about COVID for the moment, and we have to be very careful. But I imagine amongst the Scientologists inside and outside the church, probably more outside the church, but either way, I think a lot of them aren't buying it, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. In that,
what do you mean?
They're not buying the event of COVID. They're not believing it. And so I think that the tech contributes to people who think for themselves and who can evaluate information and can spot things. So maybe government doesn't like that because they want people to just be sheep. But in this situation with the interference, though, I do think this is an OSA thing because I think that someone like John Attack goes with the Scientology is crap and really goes down that angle. And I don't think it reaches as many Scientologists because you just go, oh, this guy just hates all of Scientology. But independent Scientologists are a bit funky because we say, no, Hubbard was good, but there was this and that, and it's much more complex, and that reaches people more, right? So I think that like Osa and Miscavige, they might want to let John Attack say his stuff because they're like, well, he's just preaching to people who are already on some really anger bent on Scientology. But the independents we have to stop because they're actually delivering the tech, but also they actually speak about Scientology in a way that can reach church members. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, who knows? Maybe. But the way I see it, there are more and more people who are interested either out of sheer curiosity or because they're, let's say, researchers on a spiritual path who want to look into Scientology. They want to find out, okay, what this guy, L. Ron Hubbard, was teaching, what he was talking about. And at the same time, because of everything they heard about the Church of Scientology, they don't want to become the members of it, because they don't want to subscribe to cult. And they look for independent practitioners where they could learn about Scientology. And I think it's a growing public at the moment, that we have those, who are somewhere in between, they're not either into becoming Scientologists, whatever it implies, but at the same time, they want to look into it. They want to learn what it is. They want to have some benefits from the auditing. And I think that public is growing, more and more.
Well, yeah, I like the idea of people looking into Scientology because I think it's so looking into every facet of it, the conspiracy side of it, the L. Ron Hubbard's history, the religious practices, everything, because I think overall it increases your consciousness, so increases your awareness because you're getting exposed to interesting ideas. You're like, hold on, what? There's in Ron's journal, there's bankers controlling the world. Oh, hold on, what? This thing about Lucifer, what the hell? And then oh, what? This thing about Surfax, and then it's just got all these ideas that open up people's minds, pretty much.
Do you know anything about Gestalt therapy?
Gestalt?
Yeah, have you heard it?
I think I've heard of it though.
Okay, well, Gestalt therapy nowadays is one of the acknowledged mainstream schools of therapy nowadays, okay? And it was founded by a guy named Fritz Perls. He was a German, born in 1893. in Germany. And he was a companion of Wilhelm Reich for a period of time. And he came up with the basics of his own therapy, which he called Gestalt. Anyway, why I mention this, when he and his wife moved to United States, to Esalen, I think. I don't know where Esalen is. Is it in California or whatever it is? Uh, when they founded their institute there, and were starting with Gestalt, they were considered a cult, you know. And there are even some practitioners of Gestalt therapy who nowadays claim that those people who continued Fritz Perls' work actually gave the proper Gestalt therapy to people, and that Fritz Perls became a sort of a new age teacher with his weird ideas. And what I learned a little bit about the life in Esalen Institute in the early 60s, I think, it was pretty much like a cult. You know, you have some sort of rules of living and so on. Why I mention that is it's an interesting example of somebody and something which was in the beginning on the fringe of society. It was even considered a cult. It was a bit cultic. Its founder got an image of a little bit of a weird guy. I'm talking about Fritz Perls. But eventually, the knowledge he gave entered the mainstream, and his method of therapy is nowadays acknowledged as one of the main, how to say, schools of therapy in humanistic psychology, along with transactional analysis and others. We have similar parallel, you know, in Scientology. You know, what I want to say is I don't think that Scientology necessarily needs to go into future being locked within a cult or cultic mindset. You know, that it can enter the mainstream society and the public as valuable knowledge about the human mind, and maybe be used by people that way in the future. And this paper, which I mentioned by John Wolfe, is very interesting because it was published in a magazine called The Humanist Psychologist. And that's the magazine for which they say is devoted to reflective inquiry into humanistic psychology, is broadly defined. And he made a paper, which I lost now. I tried to open it, really. Maybe I will have to find it again. But a paper in a scientific magazine endorsed by American Psychology Association, APA, which goes into explanation of auditing, steps of auditing, communication cycle, auditing communication cycle, and concludes with all the values of that practice for self-inquiry. I think that's a precedent. I think that's something which shows that the knowledge of Scientology is beyond religious cultic form of thinking, and that it can enter the society with its valuable knowledge. You know?
Yeah, but also I wouldn't want people to get put off by a cult, because I think cults are cool. I think they're these cool, interesting groups you can get involved with. They're much better than nothing. It's like what Hubbard says, the wrong thing to do is nothing. So it's like
I would actually advise people to clear the word cult. You know, I agree there with you. We use that word in a derogative sense nowadays, you know. But originally, yeah, it was not a bad word at all. You know, like, I don't know, Roman Catholic Church is a cult if you look into, you know, clear definition of the word.
Well, I mean, look at this NXIVM cult or whatever the girls were brandishing themselves. They chose to be a part of that cult. They wanted to join it. No one had a gun to their head. You know what I mean? I mean, they were pressured. There might have been some sort of pressuring, but they went along with it. You have to ask the question with these cults: why do people get involved with them? They're getting something out of the cult. That's why they get involved with it. And then something goes bad. It's like you've got a group of friends and you hang out or something, and then something goes bad, and then after that you're like, oh, that was fucked up or whatever, and it's like, it doesn't mean that group of friends are bad. It's just like something bad experience just happened.
Yeah. I think we should probably have to find a new nomenclature, you know, some new words to describe that phenomena that we're talking about, maybe the cult. Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah,
Could be cult used. But essentially, what I wanted to say is that mind frame, where you know, where somebody is dictating for you how to think or how to live or what to do. You know, that's what I think. And of when I say cult, that is something to be avoided, because all this work, you know, related to auditing and the studying Scientology is about freeing us, you know, not about enslaving us, you know. And if somebody is telling you how to think or what to believe or how to behave or what to do and in what way to do it, that's not freeing people up, you know. The another cup of tea is that we have to agree on certain axioms or truths, you know. You know, for instance, there is a certain body of knowledge behind all it, and there are certain principles how that technology is to be applied. If one meddles with that and changes it without any deep insight into why it is set up that way, that's probably another cup of tea. You know, it should be applied the way it is. There are certain reasons for it. And that's why we study that body of knowledge. But that is different from the cult in the sense we use that word. You know, in other words, I want to say there is so much talk about standard tech. I want to say that standard technology can still be applied and kept as standard tech, and still you can be able to think free and be free.
Okay, so I want to ask you some things about the COVID situation, about where you are. So are you under lockdown at the moment?
Not at the moment. We have certain restrictions in terms of the work of the restaurants and pubs. And I think on weekend, shopping malls are closed, but they open them up, you know, Monday through Friday. So
What
I'm not
about
really sure.
is it like a seating restriction in the restaurants or something?
There is, yeah. You have to have like a certain distance between tables and stuff like that. But you know, I work from home and I'm pretty much spend a lot of my time on internet. And this Clearing Academy is obviously an internet project, so I spend a lot of time on internet and communicating with people via my computer. So I'm not that much in the city. So all these measures didn't affect me much personally. I'm living also a little bit off the center of the city.
How many lockdowns have you had?
I think 2 or 3 or one. I'm not sure.
Wow,
Two.
you must have had some very nice lockdowns if you can't even remember.
I tell you, it didn't change too much for me because where I live, a little bit outside of town, you know, I could even go out and nobody would notice, you know. And but anyway, you know, I spent much of my time inside and on my terrace and by my computer anyway. But what I want to say is I did not experience that we had any very harsh measures over here in Serbia, you know. When I read the news from other parts of Europe, especially European Union, we are not still part of European Union.
So hold on, so Yugoslavia is not in European Union?
No, no, it wasn't. And these countries which emerged from Yugoslavia, some of them were accepted, but Serbia wasn't. You know, it's a political game. You know,
Is Czech Republic in the European Union?
Yeah, it is.
But they use their own currency.
I don't know for Czech Republic.
I think they use crowns or something.
I'm not sure.
I don't think they use euros.
Not necessarily everybody use euros. You know, you also have examples, for instance, of Montenegro, which is not a member of European Union, was part of Yugoslavia, and they are using euro as their official currency.
Wow, that's a confusion.
Yeah, they're not members of the EU, but they use euro.
Yeah, the COVID situation where I was at was pretty steep, and people believe in it more here because we didn't have communism in the past. And I spoke to someone from who came here probably around 1970 or something from Yugoslavia, and he told me that a lot of people don't quite follow the COVID rules, and they don't quite believe or trust the government. I guess because of communism and stuff, they've learned not to trust the government.
There could be many, many reasons, not only communism, because there is a long history here of distrust to government, and a long history of government, either communist or non-communist, doing bad things, So people are sort of, like careful about any form of government or anybody who's governing.
Yeah, well, I spoke to a lady who came here again, like this other guy around 1970 or something, and she told me how bad communism was in Yugoslavia. I think it was maybe Croatia she was in, and she came here and she said here was so much better. She was like, you could actually.
It really depends who you talk to, because, for instance, there are those political immigrants who left Yugoslavia, for instance, either Croatian or Serbian, who were right-wingers, and they left Yugoslavia because they disagreed with the politics there at the time, and they usually they often exaggerate their stories about that. It really depends who you talk to. I still maintain the belief that Yugoslavia was the middle way, between East and West. It was not really like the situation in Romania or in Bulgaria or countries like that. They were really under pressure.
Well,
enough. I was growing up, with books and rock and roll and traveling abroad, and people with Yugoslav passport, they didn't know we did not need to have a visa to the U.S. In 1970s, I think 2 U.S. presidents visited Yugoslavia, and Tito, the president of Yugoslavia at the time, was accepted almost as a royalty in the White House when he visited the U.S. I mean, we traveled a lot abroad, and culturally, we were growing up as if we were in the West.
Well, this lady was saying how that the communists would come and just steal their stuff and just take heaps of stuff. And I go, would they call it tax? And she'll go, no, it wasn't called tax. They'll just come and take 83% of businesses' profits and stuff. And she would say that, like, she came to Australia and she just goes, it was much nicer here. Like, you could get things and products and stuff, and churches weren't interrupted, because over there apparently, like, agents would interrupt church by turning on a motorbike on the street and trying to interrupt their church services, and they had to do church services like secret services.
I'm not a communist, so I don't have interest to defend the Yugoslav government. But what happened is that after the Second World War, they confiscated like private factories and stuff like that. It's the nature of that political system, But I can tell you from my experience that later on in 70s and 80s, many people have their small private companies. Like small businesses were allowed. But having like private factories and meddling with resources of the country, that was not allowed. And I'm not aware that anybody was taking anybody's property. There was only that expropriation that happened after the Second World War, when the communists came to power in 1945. 1946, and then they expropriated some factories and land and stuff like that.
Yeah, this lady was saying that I'm trying to remember. I can't quite remember, but basically she was saying that it was much better here, and then she said, but not now. He is more corrupted, and he is more like communism now. And she goes, yeah, she's like, yeah, this all this equality crap, this is all communism crap. And she's like, communism's taking over here. And I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, yeah. And but anyway, I mean, just made me realize how back then, when they had more freedoms, it was so much nicer here in Australia and America and stuff. And it created like a whole generation of spoiled people. And then they started voting in all this government crap, and they didn't realize they were getting tricked into communism. And then now communism is taking over the West. And now the West is going into communism. And places like where you're from, they don't trust the government, and they're like, the government's bullshit, because they know how the government's full of these bureaucrat lying lawyers and stuff who just want to steal your shit. And she said, she goes, the number one thing I learned about communism was that, like, not to trust what the government says, and just this ability to, like, spot bullshit, basically, because she uses it now and she doesn't get tricked by things. But I actually, yeah, but I didn't ask her about COVID though. I wonder what she thought about COVID. But anyway.
Okay, I have like a few friends living in Australia, and my best friend from childhood is living in Australia in Adelaide. And he told me that for him, Australia is the best country in the world. He loves Australia.
Yeah, it seems like it's still all right here, but I don't know. When I spoke to the lady, she goes, Australia is so good. But then I pressed her on that, on how good Australia was. And then she ended up saying Australia was so good when I came here, because she came here from a communist country back around 1970. And the difference was, like, so striking. And she was like, whoa, whoa. And I spoke to another guy who was an Italian who probably came here again around 1970. And his impression was Australia was so good, but it could be because he's coming from these other places. And then his initial impression when he first stepped into this country and started living here was like, whoa, this is good. But that was the old Australia, you know? But anyway, I don't think it's any good here. I think it's actually quite terrible. I think it's quite communistic here. And we've got speeding cameras everywhere and a police state. And, we didn't have that. And I think that we would like this cool, laid back country. And we didn't have this strong vibe of freedom that America has. So we just let the government do whatever they wanted to do, and they just took over and went crazy.
We will see what will happen, you know, whatever future brings.
Yeah. There's not much more I want to ask you about, really.
If you want, is it okay if I make a little announcement for the Clearing Academy?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anybody who's interested can actually, you'll be able to visit our website very soon. You know, it will be on, I hope, by the end of this month, and it's simply clearingacademy.org. Okay. And what we will offer there will be actually a range of courses in different tiers. You know, from a tier with basic courses for those who want to get introduced to Scientology and with clearing technology in general.
And what languages?
And it's all in English.
Okay.
It's all in English. And also intermediate and advanced tiers where people can actually learn the auditing technology and how to apply it. Our emphasis is on academy levels, and we want to train auditors. You know, that's our primary desire, you know, our primary goal, to train people to apply this technology. So I'm really inviting anybody who's interested to visit the site and get in contact. And I don't know, maybe we have a little bit different angle or different slant on whole that world of Scientology, you know, from many independent groups. But at the same time, we are very pro standard tech. You know, we do not change the principles. We do not meddle with the axioms upon which that technology is based. So our training and our services is very standard tech.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't use the miscavages like editing.
No. Our check sheets and course specs we use, they're all mostly, you know, prior to 1980, 81. Our academy level check sheets are usually 1976, 1978. Yeah.
Cool.
And we have some people there with us who are very experienced old timers with Scientology. You know, it's not like that all of us are, I would say, on the same level. You know, we have some very, very experienced Scientologists helping us. We have also some new people who are just starting learning. You know, it's very kind of mixed group.
So it's an online course room and you sign up and then you can do the courses over the computer and over video calls.
That's right. And you can get your checkouts and do your clay demos and other standard study tech things via the camera and online, and get standard supervision and learn.
Mm. Cool. And if someone wanted to get audited by you, like, do you charge like an hourly rate or something, or what?
I negotiate that according to one's financial situation, according to one's financial abilities. I'm asking for some exchange, and it's basically exchange for my time. I don't know to put the price on this knowledge. I don't know how to put price on that, but I can put some price on my personal time, which I use to spend some time with you, in auditing. And how much I would charge that, it really depends from person to person. And that's really that. But I would say it probably goes to average of about $40-50 per hour, not more.
Yeah, so it's pretty affordable.
It is, and I strongly believe that this tax should be available to people, that it should be affordable. At the same time, some fair exchange must exist, but it shouldn't be an excuse for trying to grab money from people. It shouldn't be used that way, not at all. That's why our courses and auditing per hour is probably probably cheaper than others, and I hope that those others don't hate us for that. But it is not our intention to dump the prices. Our intention is to allow to people to get to learn this and to have some benefits from auditing, because we are living in a world where it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to earn money.
Wow, yeah, you sure said it with COVID and stuff. I mean, people's businesses, so many of them are gone bankrupt. It's pretty crazy. Is that what you're having where you're from?
Can you repeat?
In Serbia, are you seeing businesses close down?
Well, yeah, people are having a big, very, very tough time now, especially those people who depend on services delivered in person, like restaurants, like places where you have to go to get some service, and so you must have personal physical contact, with the repairman or the waiter or I don't know, whatever. And those kinds of businesses are really impacted heavily. Those who mostly work like from office, office kind of work, or trade over internet or something like that, they do fine. But those who teach or give classes or have some, run hotels or motels or whatever, it's really a tough time for them. Musicians also, and artists, people who have to who live off their concerts, for instance, they're also in big trouble.
Yeah, and we've now got when COVID first started, they issued like renters, like they didn't have to pay their bills or something like that, but that's run out now. And then the government gave out loans to help people, and now they're calling those loans in. And then the government gave out money to businesses to help them, and they've cancelled that. So not only was there bankruptcies in the first year, even though they did these things to try and stop it, now we're having a whole new wave of bankruptcies because they've cut these other things. And so even though we're not fully opened up, we're at, I don't know, like stage 1 restrictions or something like that, but it's much better than being properly locked down. But even still, even though that we're sort of opened up, sort of COVID normal opened up, because of these other, anyway, these other thingos ending, people are getting bankrupted and stuff. And it was like, so I saw some stat that said like in February, the amount of people filing, or businesses or something filing for bankruptcy, was 3 or something. And then in April already, I think it's like 20. So it's like, it's interesting. It's going to be really interesting. And what about, have they banned any of the vaccines, and have they stopped doing any of the vaccines in your country?
We have actually several vaccines available in Serbia. You know,
And have they banned anything? Because just recently they banned the vaccine for people under the age of 50. They banned the AstraZeneca one in Australia for people under the age of 50.
I think there is a restriction for youngsters. You know, people under age of 16. I think cannot receive it. But we have also that controversial AstraZeneca here, but also Pfizer and that Chinese Sinopharm and that's it, I think. Sinopharm and Russian, yeah, Sputnik 5 or Sputnik V, whatever it is. I don't know if it's Roman numeral.
V is 5.
V.
Yeah,
I don't know which one it is. But anyway, Sputnik, the Russian one. And they're all actually available, but the problem here is there are many people who are onto those conspiracy theory side about vaccines and they don't want to take them. So I don't know. You know, some people took them, some people don't want to take them. Some even protest against taking them. You know, it's really hard. You know, this is times when some Scientology is good to apply, you know, because this is sort of a chaos. And one of the ways to deal with chaos is to try to find some stable data, you know, some stable data to try to evaluate the rest of happenings. The only danger in that is the fact that stable data may not be true. You know, so if one picks a stable datum which is not true, then the whole evaluation of the situation will be wrong. So it should be very careful to try to pick up something which is true and then to start looking from that perspective. But I don't have any advice in that really. I suppose that each one of us must try to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, because they were talking about the vaccine for the past year, saying it's gonna end the COVID thing, and then now they've released the vaccines, but they've released them so slowly that it's just dragged things out. And then now some of the vaccines have been banned for certain age groups, and that drags it out even more.
Yeah.
And then they're even possibly suggesting it's not going to work on certain strains. So it's just like it's almost like nah, we've got the vaccine, but nah, COVID's not ending.
Who knows what is going on and how long this will last? I definitely don't know.
It's pretty wild because when they just recently in Australia when they banned the what is it, the AstraZeneca for under 50s, they in the news report they said at the same time, so there could be more lockdowns and things are going to get extended. And it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember when this first became a serious thing in March last year. I was like, you know, thinking, oh, just, you know, a few weeks or something like that, and it's just like, oh my god.
Very, very strange times. I was talking recently to one dear friend who is a yoga teacher, you know, and he's really very, very advanced practitioner of yoga. And he also did a little bit of the Scientology clearing test. You know, he got audited and he also does some sessions with others and so on. And he did not have any answer really for the situation, but he said something like, you know, when you are on a co-auditing intensive, you know, and you have to do sessions that things start happening, being wild somewhere around the room, you know, for instance, in the kitchen where the cooks are preparing lunch for the people who are in the auditing room, you know, doing co-auditing together as a group. Suddenly a fire starts or something, you know, you wouldn't stop your session. You know, the supervisors or the staff, they would deal with the situation. You would just continue with your session, you know. And he said, when we look at the situation in the world today, you know, it's pretty much like a fire in a kitchen, you know. It doesn't mean that we should stop our own process, you know, that we should stop doing what we're doing, but just continue, you know, whatever form or
Mm.
spiritual practice or sadhana.
That's really good. That's really good advice. That's what I kind of think, because I thought about things and what I was planning on doing, and I'm like, hold on a second, I'm pretty much going to be doing what I would have done if COVID never happened anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty much just doing my own thing, and I'm going to do what I want to do, you know, career-wise and stuff like that. It might have put a little bit of a delay on things, but that's all it might have done, you know?
I think if we use this as an excuse to stop doing what we do or introduce some change into what we are doing, we will be, as it's called in Scientology, Q&Aing, you know, with the situation, you know. We shouldn't allow that. Let's just continue doing what we do and what we would be doing anyway, you know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of if there is a person bullying us, the best thing to do is just ignore it and just continue doing what you want to do, and don't let them get away with it by giving it attention.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So how, if people want to get services from you, do they go to your Facebook or what?
They should go to the website, theclearingacademy.org, and they can contact us through that. And on the website, it's still not on, all right? It will be by the end of this month. But there is like a full explanation of what Clearing Academy is and what programs we offer and how they can enroll. You know. So it will be very approachable, really. You know.
Good.
I mean, we currently have some students and have some PCs and so on, but it's from before, so to speak, you know. So this website will hopefully bring some new people, you know.
Yeah, cool. What's the website again?
Clearingacademy.org.
Okay, and do you have an email?
Oh yeah, info@clearingacademy.org, and that email is functional. So yeah, if anybody want to get in touch, yeah, you can write to me at info@clearingacademy.org.
Yeah, cool. Because I mean, I'm not even full on a Scientologist. I still call myself 50% a Scientologist. And I think that there's some wrong information in there. But the reason why I'm still a Scientologist is because overall, I think that exposing yourself to Scientology increases your consciousness. That's what I've come to as a conclusion. Because there are a lot of people who have done interesting things after doing Scientology. A lot of people who have become like top conspiracy theorists and stuff like that. And I think it's because it just increases your awareness. I think maybe Hubbard was a little bit of a shit talker, but his shit talking makes you go, hold on a second, what's he saying here? What's he talking about? And he gets you to think outside the box. Yeah, it's, whereas if somebody didn't do this, if they were playing like a computer game, or if they were doing like Christianity or something, I don't think the person is getting that increase in consciousness. I don't think they're getting exposed to things that wakes them up to what's going on in the world.
Well, I think it can also happen to people who approach Scientology to become dogmatists too. You know, I know people like that. You know, who look only into Scientology and what L. Ron Hubbard was writing as a scripture and take it very dogmatically, and then they don't think that knowledge, I would say, let me put it properly in English, they don't think that for themselves, you know? They don't
apply it to their own life or something. Yeah, well, that's like the way how I think it is with all of the tech is like, let's say, I think admin tech's a perfect example, is that I think someone should expose themselves to admin tech. I don't necessarily think someone should pick up admin tech and exactly apply it exactly as it's written to their business. I just think a business owner should go and look at admin tech and go, oh, because it's really interesting. And it goes, oh, maybe I can do this to my business, or I can do a bit of that. And that's how I think it should be approached. I think when it's done in the nutcase way, where you do it exactly, actually, I think it can cause some problems. But that's why.
best to take one bit, try it, apply it, see the results. You know, if it
Yeah,
works
work with
for
it.
you,
Think,
take
yeah,
another bit.
work with it, think with it. But I think
Yeah,
that when it's done in like a literal nutcase way, like literal way, all of Scientology, that's when I think that it cannot improve someone.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think all of it's
and
about just expose yourself to Scientology. That's what I recommend. But I do think that it's a little bit scary, and if you don't want to get woken up to the truth about the Matrix, maybe you should take the blue pill. I think in the movie, the blue pill, like maybe you might, I'm not kidding, because the truth is hardcore, but if you're already half awake anyway, you might as well just do Scientology, because you're already sort of half awake. Because I was, before I did Scientology, I was already sort of not quite liking the world or seeing problems in it, and so that's why I was cool to find out the truth. But if the world was awesome, and if the world's awesome for someone listening to this right now, I don't even think maybe they should do Scientology. If it's awesome, just, you know what, just enjoy it how it is. I don't know how you can enjoy it. Maybe not seeing how messed up and crazy it is, but just maybe just don't even do Scientology, because as you do it, you become more aware, and it is confronting. It's like taking the red pill in the Matrix movie, and it's like, whoa.
yeah, recently a friend of mine in one online meeting that we had, like a group of us. I don't know if I will remember his exact words, but he said something like, "I just realized that some people are spiritually awakened and some are not, and it doesn't matter what they do. You know, they may go and receive like a ton of Scientology auditing and even maybe start OT levels and so on, and still be sort of shocked somehow." Yeah. And he said something like, "I was always wondering why that is such a case. Why some people are so open and they get benefits from all this and others don't." And he said, "I never found the answer to
Well,
that."
Scientology is for the able. Scientology is for the able.
I don't answer for that either, but I've been studying and I was involved with many other schools and practices and religions and whatever throughout my life since my early teenage days and years. Yeah, and one thing I noticed, there is no school or there is no teaching which uniformly produces great results for everyone. You know, you can go to yoga or Buddhism or Christianity or Sufism or occult orders or whatever. You will always find some people who are very dogmatist, who are very closed-minded, and who seem like if that teaching didn't touch them, didn't change them, you know. While on the other hand, you can find some people who enter something very superficially and have big revelations. And I don't know what causes that, but I would probably say that we have our individual paths, and what will be that trigger in our lives that awakens us, you know, who knows, you know. In some aspects, some very big, important aspects, for me, it was Scientology. You know, it was the trigger that awakened me to some stuff, you know. And but I don't claim that it must be necessarily true for everybody.
But also,
That is where I may differ from very dogmatist Scientologists, you know, who would probably go and say, "Oh, this is universal cure for all the ills of human race, and everybody should apply." I tend to think rather in this way: let it be available to everybody, you know, let's make it accessible to everybody, but it doesn't mean that everybody will click on it.
Well, I think that with some of these people who don't think they got any wins at all, I think that they don't realize that they have gotten some wins actually, and maybe they were expecting like if we saw that person and that person never chose to walk into the door of Scientology years ago and compared them to the person now who's maybe attacking Scientology, I actually think that they're actually a more evolved person out there attacking Scientology. You know, it sounds strange, but like they don't quite realize it. And sometimes it's happened to me where if you have a bad day, you can suddenly think, oh, you know, I haven't gotten any benefit. But then you're like, hold on a second. Years ago, how many times were you having a bad day? Heaps. Now you're just having one barely ever. So it's like there is big improvement. You know what I mean? And it's like,
That's
you know
bad
what?
day.
It's like, look, you can't communicate to, and you might not have the EP of communication that it says where you can communicate with everybody. I don't know, perfect communication or whatever the EP of grade 0 is. But stop and look at the person. After being exposed to Scientology, their ability to communicate is much better. You know, they're much more able. Whereas years ago, before this, before doing their TRs and before doing grade 0 and stuff, they were scared to beep in their car because that's a communication, beeping in a car. They were scared to do that. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You know, there are certain, like, let's say, elements in all that work which really helped me during the very tough years of the wars in the Balkans, you know. And I sometimes tell to people if they criticize me, you know, somebody who is close to me and know my faults, and they say, you're like this or you're like that. I reply, you know what? Just imagine how would I be if I never did anything like this, you know? Who knows how I would end up in my life, you know?
Well, thanks for being on the show, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's Michael Salihovich.
Very well.
Yeah. And we've got your details, so if people want to contact you, they can. That's cool. Thanks for being on. See ya.
Thank you, Andy. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.